How good is the world today for March 3rd? I will answer the question right off the bat. The world is pretty terrible today. A lot of really bad stories today, and I got hung up on a couple of them. I'm doing this very late. I'm gonna try to rush through this one. And I might not be as good humored and happy and fun as you might be expecting or hoping or preferring. But I'm gonna do my best for you guys. The foundation of my philosophy is that, you gotta laugh at the pain, right? And terrible things are the best. When things are terrible, that's the time that you should be making jokes, that you should be laughing, and you should have a good humor. So despite the fact that the rest of them are all pretty bad too, this is the story right now, is everything is terrible, except the American economy is fine. So we got that going for us, which is nice. Hope you're enjoying our friend here doing the yoga with the kitty cats. The interesting thing is, someone in the Reddit comments pointed this out. Look when the cats jump, when they start running. It's like right as she starts falling. I just noticed the one, you can't see me point, but the one who bashes into the chair over here. Okay, funk. But anyway, so look, she is like, just starts going down when they freak out. I love that one cat. Okay, so on that note, let's get to the headline rundown for today. Again, like I said, going to try to rush through things a little bit, so sorry if there's not as much context and background information as you like. My suspicion is that I, as a loquacious son of a bitch, tend to give a little too much of that anyways. So, first story, the death toll from Syria's war is actually 470,000, according to some researchers. 11.5% of Syria's population has been killed or injured. The last estimate was 250,000 in mid-2014. And the life expectancy in Syria has dropped from 70 to 55.4. So this is, shouldn't be news to anyone that things are awful in Syria. Having a number for it is nice, because now we get to say things like 500,000 people died and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That 11.5% statistic is kind of remarkable. It's one of those things, what's almost remarkable about it to me is that 88.5% of people have not been injured. There's this, Malcolm Gladwell makes this great point in one of his books about near misses, and he's talking about bombing London in World War II, and how basically after a little while, people just stopped giving a shit when bombs would fall, because after you have a near miss with a bomb, after one, lands next to you and blows up and you're fine, you just get this like godlike air of confidence. And, bombs fall and they kill people, but they sort of have this crazy effect on the rest of people. That's something you can't ignore when you start talking about these people putting themselves in boats and dinghies and trying to sail across the Mediterranean. Is they're the survivors of some rough ass shit. And they're tough people, and they have a worldview that is way different from anything we can ever possibly understand. There's that. Speaking of the migrants, the European Council president told economic migrants not to risk their lives as crowds swell on Greece-Macedonia border. Don't come to Europe, he said. So I guess that's all taken care of. Guess they're just not going to come to Europe now. Guy said not to, so, they got to do what he said. Like we were just talking about, it's not like these guys have, survived bombs and terrorism and war. So I'm sure they're going to listen to that. So good for you, Donald Tusk. Syrian opposition casts doubt on UN peace talks. This is kind of what we've been talking about for the last few days. There's, basically they feel like the regime is not doing what it said it would with the ceasefire, and that the US and Russia aren't holding them to that. So why would they go to the peace talks? Why would they put faith in that? Valid question. Obviously peace is good, and it would be nice if they, could work something out. But, these are guys who were risking their lives for years to take out President Assad. And it's looking more and more like the international community is not really going to push for that what's going to be pushed at these peace talks is keeping Assad and sort of having some kind of political transition in place to another guy who's just as bad. So what is there for them at the peace talks? not much. Most of the provinces in Syria, this is just a weird sort of thing that happened, probably nothing, but most of the provinces in Syria lost electricity last night. No one really knows why yet. It's probably just some sort of weird infrastructure thing, but it's, it's not unusual, obviously, for places in this war-torn region to lose power, but it has not happened on a scale like this. And, remember, before all this went down, Syria was a pretty well-developed, well-organized country, so something weird is going on here. Hopefully we'll learn the story in the next few days, but for now I don't have it for you. Olympic Chiefs, this is a cool one. The Olympic Chiefs, the head of the Olympic Committee, gave go-ahead for refugee team to take part at the Olympics in Rio in 2016. They're going to have more than 40 high-level athletes who are currently refugees. Sorry, I just rewrote that. I'm just noticing that I rewrote the sub-headline there. So yeah, that's the thing. They're going to be more than 40 refugee athletes competing in Rio, presumably as their own team. And, I'm sure they'll do horribly, but it's better than what they were going to do otherwise. And it's a nice way to raise awareness of the most talked about story in the world. So that'll, again, problem solved again. Twice over we've solved the problem today. Look at that. We're doing great. Let's move on to the next thing. It's a fun one, actually. A U.S. agency says it has beaten Elon Musk and Bill Gates. Bill Gates? I guess Bill Gates is with the Gates Foundation. To the holy grail of battery storage. It's a breakthrough, and it could be the next generation of storage. Oh, sorry, you guys are going to see a thing that I forgot to do. I pushed this thing back so that you can see me a little better. That's why it was not cropped well. Okay, cool. Anyways, they have built some kind of great battery. They've been developing it for years. Presumably we're going to, see the thing, and it's going to go in stores and in, factories and start powering all kinds of solar stuff. Obviously, one of the main obstacles to solar power kind of taking over as the renewable resource that saves us from all that shit is that it's really hard to store, and that we don't have batteries that are efficient enough. That's what Tesla is doing with Powerwall, and apparently it's what ARPA has been doing with this battery. Looks like they've done a good job, so yay, government. Look at everybody's doing a great job today. I don't know why I was so down a minute ago. Things are lovely. Let's keep going. Okay. U.S. factory order data points to easing in a manufacturing slump. We're going to talk about a lot of economic stuff at the end of the program, but this is good. Manufacturing has been doing not so great recently. It's not the biggest chunk of our economy. We're mostly a services economy, but it's never good. Sorry, there's a spider right there. He's gone now. So good news that we're getting better manufacturing data shows that not only are, it's a good indicator for the economy, but the types of people who you want to see benefiting in the economy, right? Those sort of lower educated, lower class factory worker types. The Donald Trump crowd getting some work, so that's good. I'm not sure with the lav mic if you can hear me whisper things. I haven't done that yet. I said the Donald Trump crowd. In case you couldn't, just to make sure the joke hits with all due subtlety. Another one, over in South Korea, MPs set a world record filibuster at 192 hours. 38 different congressmen, parliament members agreed or participated in the... Sorry, I hastily set up this stream. I've been better about it in the past, I promise. 38 lawmakers combined, 192 hours, trying to block an anti-terror bill that, they thought was putting way too many freedoms at risk, that was going to be a terrible blight on civil liberties. And as if to prove them right, as soon as they stopped filibustering, the law passed. So, sorry guys. When we get to our first big story, though, you might be happy for some, really strong military defense capabilities over there in South Korea, but we'll see. Obviously, civil rights are important too. LinkedIn CEO did a great thing. He basically said, so the profit forecast for LinkedIn for 2016, not so great. Stock is not doing so great either. So the CEO took the equity package, basically the bonus of stocks that he was going to get for the year, worth about $14 million, and he, gave it out to the people in the company instead of keeping it for himself. So it's a really awesome move, and it honestly made me be like, shit, I should use LinkedIn more. So good for them. That's nice of him. Less nice, African elephants are being killed faster than they're being born, according to data released by the UN. So it suggests that obviously the population is going down, which is bad because elephants are awesome. As we saw yesterday, Donald Trump's son killed one of them. Donald Trump's father is killing the metaphorical one, that is the GOP. 60% of deaths are from poachers, which that sounds like a lot. At least 20,000 elephants were killed for ivory, so we're talking about, 32,000 elephants dying a year, meaning about 12,000 would die naturally. Figure some of the ones who were poached. So let's say 14,000 is like the natural rate of death for these elephants. 20,000 are dying because of poaching. So more, it's like, do you see the point I'm trying to get here? Like, naturally 14,000 would be dying. Instead, now 34,000 are dying, and that chunk that is poaching is bigger than like all natural causes of elephant death combined. So damn, that bad guys there. In a sort of weirdly perverse story of how a while ago I was talking about the infinitely complicated web of indirect effects of our actions and how you can't, you might try to do something good and you end up doing something terrible. The World Wildlife Fund was accused of facilitating human rights abuses of tribal people in Cameroon. The conservation organization funds and logistically aids anti-poaching eco-guards. And these guys are going around victimizing pygmy groups, according to an advocacy group for those pygmy groups. I feel like I'm not supposed to call people pygmies. That feels very like old-fashioned and racist. And the word pygmy to me means like a little tiny orange man like running around. But I guess they are. I guess that's what they are, and that now I'm racist for having this assumption. So sorry, pygmies. I didn't mean to think less of you. Anyways, the Baka, who have lived traditionally in what is now Cameroonian national parks, they were forbidden to enter many of those parks. They're like natural, traditional hunting areas, even though they're pygmies. They're not the poachers from the last story. They're said to have minimal impact on the environment. But at the same time, the forests have been overrun by militarized groups and large-scale poachers, and buffer zones rented to safari companies. Jesus, that's almost as disgusting. Which means that the Baka haven't been able to survive. The eco-guards, who are supposed to be keeping out those other guys, have been harassing the Baka instead, and just a bad sort of situation there. So obviously, let's keep in mind, it's not like the WWF was like, hey, fuck up the pygmies, yo. They were just trying to do the right thing, but they hired the wrong guys, and then those wrong guys did the wrong thing with their rightly intentioned money. So that sucks. Remember that plane that disappeared and no one knows what happened to it? They found some debris. It's being analyzed in Australia. So there's apparently a high possibility that the debris came from the same type of plane. Obviously, there is not much, it's a big fucking passenger jet. There's not much debris from those things just floating around. So there's a good chance that it is that plane, but we won't know. Hopefully it is, and this becomes a huge story again, and even though it's stupid, it takes a little bit away from the free news Donald Trump gets, so that would be lovely. Sorry, hold on a second. Okay. He's being prosecuted under a controversial law, says, where do we go? And being accused of offending the sentiments of Orthodox believers. The Soviet Union was was atheist, right? The communists tend to be atheists. The Soviet Union was certainly atheist. And I remember being in either Moscow or St. Petersburg, seeing a big monument, memorial type thing to atheism, to atheists. And now here we are, where denying the existence of God gets you thrown in jail for a year. So just goes to show you what, a guy like Putin and an organization like that, and the consolidation of power, and what needs to happen to take over. You kind of need to lean on something like a church, and you end up in a situation like this. So sorry, Russians. Speaking of religion, a Pennsylvania bishop who hid sex abuse by a monster priest for 40 years, a jury found that he did that, and now he's going to get sentenced and sent to jail. So good for you guys. Little "we did it" Reddit joke in there for you. Clearly this is because of the spotlight. We did it, Hollywood! The Texas trooper who was involved with the arrest of Sandra Bland has been formally fired, so that's good. A grand jury indicted him in December, and now he no longer works. 2 months it took them after a grand jury. I mean, they indicted him, right? They didn't charge him, but still seems like that could have happened a little bit faster, but good that it happened. And then today's Can Bees Think story. Oil and gas industry has pumped millions into Republican campaigns. Can bees think? A new study confirms that no, they cannot. Okay, so let's get to North Korea, where Kim Jong-un has ordered the country to be ready to use nuclear weapons at any time. Now, North Korea has a long history of, getting in trouble and then posturing like they're going to nuke everybody to sort of scare everyone into giving them aid and easing up on them and being nice and playing friendly. Where we are, just to give you the backstory here, catch up. So, North Korea tests the hydrogen bomb back in January. South Korea gets scared. Everyone gets scared. People believe it's not really a hydrogen bomb. It's just like an enriched, lesser bomb. So it's not really that bad. As bad. UN voted yesterday to put some serious sanctions on North Korea. There have been sanctions on North Korea, but they were ratcheted way up. And go look at yesterday's story if you want all the details, because I went through them. And then this morning, North Korea launched some missiles into the water. They went about 90 miles and then just went into the water. It was just a sort of like, hey guys, remember how we have missiles? Yeah, want to fuck with us now? Which is, of course, everyone else has missiles too, buddy. That's not scary. We can shoot your missiles down with 15 different types of guns, handheld guns we have. That's not true, but it feels like that's roughly the degree to which we should not be scared of North Korean missiles. Anyways, let's just run through the story real quick, even though I pretty much just told all of it. In the face of growing threat from enemies, the official media said that that thing up there. He plans to use the military on a preemptive basis, or at least turn their posture to that. Kim made his comments while monitoring the test firing of new high-caliber multiple rocket launcher on Thursday. Just hours after the sanctions, they fired these missiles. Okay, I think that's pretty much the whole story. Worth pointing out, they have the ability to detonate a weapon in controlled tests, but the idea of doing it in an actual strike is maybe a little bit optimistic for them. So I wouldn't get too... First of all, certainly if you're listening to this and you're in the English-speaking world, you're fine, because they can't strike us. However, if they did attack somebody, shit would probably go to hell pretty quick. Most likely, if they aggressively, preemptively hit somebody, China would not stand by them. China, first of all, has very little, has something to gain from their trade relationship with North Korea, and they love that buffer between them and South Korea, but they're not, you guys can nuke somebody tied up with North Korea. So even if they do, the world will probably be fine. It would be, the most horrible tragedy of the last, 60 years. But it's probably not going to happen, so don't get too bent out of shape about it. Moving on, this is the thing that really got me twisted earlier, and I had to write up this whole long Facebook post with my thoughts. It's on my personal Facebook page, not the Globalist page, because I try to keep the Globalist page, sort of agnostic in the election. I don't do a great job, and I certainly have my preference, which is for Bernie Sanders, but anyways, let's get into this story. So this woman, Berta Cáceres, is a Honduran environment and human rights activist, was found dead this morning in her home. She was shot 4 times, so let's go ahead and call it murder. She was awarded the Goldman Environmental Prize for her opposition to one of Central America's biggest hydropower projects. She was the co-founder of the Council of Indigenous Peoples of Honduras, called COPIN. She found shot dead at 1 a.m. in the middle of the night. Police told local media the killings occurred during an attempted robbery, but no one buys that, and they think it was an assassination, which it pretty most likely was, unless robbers decided to just rob this prominent activist house for no political reason and then shoot her dead when this is a non-violent activist. She's not a guerrilla warrior, so I'm assuming she wouldn't have tried to fight off the robbers. So let's go ahead and just say she was assassinated, right? That is clearly the case in this situation. So it's unclear how many assailants participated in the attack. She was shot 4 times. So 1, 2, I mean, maybe a bunch, and they were just standing there. We don't really know. So she's a member of the Lenca indigenous group, which is the largest in Honduras. She got the prize for the opposing the dam we were just talking about, the Agua Zarca Cascade of 4 giant dams in the Gualcarque River basin, which is, I assume, this. I don't entirely know. So her campaign managed to hold up the project, which is being built by a big local firm with the backing of international engineering and finance companies. And she managed to get China's Sino Hydro Company and the World Bank's private sector arm, the International Finance Corporation, to pull out of the deal. So she cost a lot of people in Honduras a lot of money, and a lot of people in the rest of the world a lot of money. She even called for other foreign partners, including the Dutch Development Bank, the Finnish Fund for Industrial Cooperation, and German companies to pull out, but apparently they didn't. So she's not popular with powerful people. She was realistic about the risks she faced, but she felt obliged to fight on and urged others to do so too. Now, the danger appears to have increased in recent weeks for her after a march in Rio Blanco 2 weeks ago, 20th of February. She and other participants in the rally were confronted by the army, police, local mayor, and employees of the dam company. Several were detained and some were threatened. So since then, she's been terrified, fearing for her life. Not terrified, she's a brave-ass woman, but she was fearing for her life, and last night she lost it. This is not an unusual story in Honduras. Honduras, between 2010 and 2014, has seen 101 campaigners killed, a higher death toll relative to population than anywhere else, according to the study by the NGO Global Witness, which studies a lot of places. It's not, they don't go in every country. There's a lot of terrible places which may have higher death tolls, but compared to some shitty places, Honduras is worse. A disproportionately high number of those killed were from indigenous communities who resisted development projects or the encroachment of farms on their territory. That is, by and large, the worst thing you can do. The worst person to be is a member of a small tribe somewhere where a big company wants your shit, because they're going to claim they own it. You're going to say, no, you don't. This is mine. I've been here for generations. And then some military force is going to come in and kill you, and no one's going to care. And so that's what happened to, I can't remember this woman's name. I can't say it, but whatever. That's what happened to her. It's going to happen again and again and again and again. It's just the way the world goes. You know, there's a long-standing connection between capital and armies. That is what armies exist for, is to protect ownership of shit, and then to take ownership of shit. And so long as we have big-ass, powerful armies then they're going to need the support of rich people, and those rich people are going to want them to do things like this. That is how the world works. Sorry, there's no hope here. That's really the end of this story, just a lot of eulogizing her. If you care, and I mean, she was a good woman, and she deserves to be eulogized, so maybe come read this story. But the thing that really got me so distraught was this story, basically detailing how Hillary Clinton enabled the coup in Honduras. This article is very sensationally written, and it is unfair in a lot of ways and takes some quotes out of context. I have a lot of parts highlighted, but I'm not going to read them because of all that stuff I just said. So basically what happened is, so U.S. policy is that after a military coup, we cut off aid to the, fucking dictators who just took charge. It's something that you kind of, decent people obviously agree with right away. However, after the coup, so there's... Honduras had this president, Manuel Zelaya, who was doing good work. He was trying, I learned what it was he was trying to do. He was trying to do a thing that was good, that was, on behalf of his people against some giant corporation. It didn't like that, so there was a military coup. According to our ambassador to Honduras, he wrote this detailed argument saying that it was a military coup. It's not some kook from some other group. This is our ambassador to the country in question. absolutely 100% hard fact believes that it was a military coup. He sent an email or something as detailing that and arguing that to Hillary Clinton. She, however, believed that there was not compelling evidence that there had been a military coup. She thought it could have been, I don't know what the other thing is that she was arguing that it could have been. She didn't, the things I read, she didn't really say. She was just like, no, we're not sure it was a military coup, so we're going to keep sending aid to Honduras, which is going to go to this military coup government, is going to allow them to establish strength and legitimacy. In her words, she wanted to, make it possible for them to have free and fair elections as soon as possible. They did have elections. Whether they were free and fair is very debatable. As we were just talking about, the state in Honduras is deplorable. It's among the worst in the world. So to argue that her plan worked is a masterpiece of mental gymnastics, and I don't know how you could do it. Like I was saying, this is how the world works. This is the state of things. This is the establishment. This is the way things are done. And that, to me, is what is so horrible about Hillary Clinton, is that she is a part. A line I read a while ago. It's not that she's been bought. You talk about her campaign contributions from the pharmaceutical industry, from banks, and all that. It's not that she's been bought, it's that she bought in. It's that she believes that Henry Kissinger was a great leader and that he should be emulated and that his praise is worthwhile. It's that she believes that after a military coup, we should send aid to the new government because they're going to support the guys, they're going to support the companies that we get along with. Could Bernie Sanders stop that? I don't know. I honestly don't know that he's powerful enough. That one man, in my more conspiratorial moments, I think about how maybe on the first day of getting into office, someone from the CIA shows up in the Oval and shows the president evidence that the CIA killed Kennedy for not listening to them. And he says basically, hey, you want to try to stop us? Think about this. Obviously, I have no evidence for that. It's completely absurd for me to allege that is how the world works. But I do believe that the system that runs the world is maybe a little more powerful than just getting a guy in there who wants to trim it down. That maybe that's what happened to all of Obama's sort of hope and change promises. He got there and he was like, oh shit, this is bigger than me. I can't stop this. But I can't justify to myself voting for someone who believes in it. And that's my argument against Hillary Clinton for today. Okay, that's enough. Let's look now at, I believe this is, come on, buddy. Look at this badass shit. So these guys are wired up in virtual reality, and they're in a big room where they can actually, move around in the virtual world by moving around in the real world. This is the ultimate fantasy of not just war games, but games of any kind. A while ago there was that omnidirectional treadmill, and people would be like, oh my god, imagine being on that thing with VR playing Skyrim, that'd be the greatest thing. And it would be second greatest only to this, to basically having a big empty space where you can do that shit. And possibly even have other people in there playing. I mean, maybe these other guys are in the same game doing the same shit and you can turn around and actually shoot people. That would be super awesome. The future holds as terrible. This is kind of my thing, is that we are right now in this moment of amazing, amazing consequence, where the future could be this. It could be this for everyone, for always, and instead of just war games, there would be, movies like this, and there'd be porn and feelies and shit like that, and all the wonderful things we've ever dreamed of. Or we could be slaves to a robot empire. I don't see a middle ground going forward. I think we're on the verge of some kind of catastrophic or wonderful change. And I, for one, am excited to see which way it plays out. Okay. Next up, we have NASA saying that the current drought in the Eastern Mediterranean, or in the Middle East, basically, is the worst as far back as they can find records. This drought is basically started in 1998, still going. If you look at the Syrian conflict and those 470,000 people that have died, it largely started as a result of a drought that led to bad farming yields, that led to a bunch of farmers, having bread riots, basically, because they know no food, no other option but to sort of demand some kind of help. Those protests turn violent, that turns into the Syrian Revolution, and then we have all of the clusterfuck that we have now. These droughts are real, their impacts are immediate and existing already, and according to this, there is no evidence that they're going to abate anytime soon, and they are absolutely caused by global warming. In pursuit of my goal of going quickly through this, I'm going to show you this map right here, that sort of the areas we're talking about are those dark brown, these browns up here. I guess they cut off the map coming away from Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is having water problems. A lot of people are having water problems. The killer fact right here is, say, look, the way they did this was they examined tree rings to see, obviously the thicker the ring, the more the tree grew that year, signs of the more water it had access to. So they found tree rings from all over the Middle East, all over a lot of places. They clearly did not just study the Middle East. And they were able to get tree rings going back about 900 years to 1100. 1100? Yeah, 1100. And they found that the drought from 1998 to 2012 is about 50% drier than the driest period in the last 500 years. In the last 500 years, 50% drier. This drought is 50% worse than any drought since the New World was discovered. And over the last 900 years, it's 10 to 20% worse. So this is one of the worst things that has happened in human history, right? We can already pin the Syrian conflict on it. God only knows what, by the way, Syrian conflict, I threw out 470,000 lives, but you also have to keep in mind all of the migrant crisis in Europe, not all of it, but a huge chunk of that. The greatest, Iraq obviously is similarly affected. They're in a slightly better situation. It hasn't turned as catastrophic, possibly, I guess, as a result of our invasion. I don't know to what extent that matters, but basically the point is this is already causing massive humanitarian problems, and like I said, no evidence that we're going to solve climate change and make this better anytime soon. So yay. Like I said, terrible news day. Let's keep the hits rolling. Here we have a story. Syrian rebel leader killed in a Golan car bombing. First of all, it's important because, this bombing, it kills a leader of a major rebel group. The main reason this is important is because the ceasefire, like we were just talking about, is a major issue right now. Whether the Syrian regime and all the various moderate rebel groups are going to be able to keep away from each other for long enough to hammer out a peace. If they can do that, that would be amazing. Odds are, like we were just talking about, they're not going to do it. Now, no one has claimed responsibility for this. It could be the regime. It could be the al-Nusra Front, which is the al-Qaeda group fighting in Syria. The area is like in Golan Heights, which is, partially occupied by Israel, but a lot of it remained in Syria. But that makes it a very strategically important place. Obviously Israel is a strategically important place for a bajillion and a half reasons, and having a foothold right there is strategically important. So what happens in the Golan Heights in the Syria conflict matters. The regime controls only about 20% of it. 30% of the whole province was left in Syrian control when Israel occupied the rest. Of that 30%, 20% belongs to Assad. So he wants to expand that 20 and at the very least not lose it. So that, is a strategically important area where a bunch of leaders, actually, it wasn't just the one big leader of the group, and a bunch of sort of like middle managers were killed as well. So big bomb in a big area. So that we're going to have to see what the fallout for that is like. Hopefully it will come out that it was al-Nusra and not the regime, because if it was the regime, these peace talks are done. All right, in Istanbul, a police station was attacked by female assailants. Take note of that female thing for a minute, because this is a rising trend, the female suicide bomber. For a while, we thought of these suicide bombers as angry men who wanted their 72 virgins, right? But more and more, we're seeing women being in these combat roles, and it's unclear whether that is, a commentary on how terrible the lives of women are in these places, or maybe it's them getting more rights, that they're allowed to be suicide bombers now too. I mean, it is a great honor. So, not really sure entirely what's going on there, but it's worth paying attention to. Let's see. No immediate claim of responsibility. People believe it's this Marxist-Leninist group called the Revolutionary People's Liberation Army Front, which is not the Kurds, which is really the key takeaway here. It was not the Kurds behind it, so it's not going to escalate that conflict at all. It's just a bomb that went off in Turkey. And honestly, I probably should have just thrown in the rundown. Speaking of conflict, why must beekeepers fight? Why can't they all get along? I ask you this. Anyways, Iran has come back online and their oil production, and they're now allowed to sell to the rest of the world, but they're actually not pumping out oil at the rate that they were expected to. They were supposed to pump out they have 1 billion barrels, right? That's what everyone's been worried about. This 1 billion barrels that's going to come back into the market right as there's already too much oil, and that's been one of the main things dragging the oil price down. But 6 weeks after the historic nuclear deal that allowed Iran to resume oil sales around the world, the OPEC member is shipping barely a third of the extra 500,000 barrels a day it had vowed to unleash within weeks of sanctions being lifted. So they said they'd be putting out 500,000. It turns out they're actually putting out something more like 100 some extra a day. They're facing a lot of obstacles, obviously. You can't just pick up a major business like this in a day. People have, they have to reconnect the deals, get those going again. They got to get the pumps that have been stagnant and sitting. They got to get them up and running. Long term, they got to set up all kinds of legal and regulatory frameworks. There's all kinds of problems, and they're causing problems. So one thing worth pointing out, I'm jumping all over this article, sorry, but one thing worth pointing out is that what has happened is roughly in line with Goldman Sachs and one other big bank's predictions. Sorry, this is why I stick to the script. Barclays, big deal. So this has already probably been somewhat priced in and should not, lead to a rise in the price of oil. The rest of this is just a bunch of numbers talking about how it's going down. If you're curious, read the article. It's on Bloomberg. It's called whatever it was called. Iran's oil market return not yet fulfilling grand promises. Okay, and here's a fun little comic. This is a better idea. Yeah, okay. Romney gave a big speech today, hitting Donald Trump, or trying to hit Donald Trump, in what is one of the most poorly considered strategic moves he could have made. I mean, Trump's whole thing is the elites hate me, they want to take me down, they're attacking me. And then Romney said, no, we're not, you're an idiot, let me attack you. So played right into Trump's hand there. Also, Romney, just doesn't have the gravitas and the sword arm to launch an attack that can take out Trump. I'll run through some of the things he said, and you can see. If we Republicans choose Donald Trump as our nominee, the prospects for a safe and prosperous future are greatly diminished. Isn't he a huge business success, and doesn't he know what he's talking about, he asked mockingly. No, he isn't and he doesn't. He inherited his business, he didn't create it. And whatever happened to Trump Airlines? How about Trump University? And then there's Trump Magazine, and Trump Vodka, and Trump Steaks, and Trump Mortgage. A business genius he is not. Which is, to his credit, that's the attack that Romney is qualified to make, right? Romney's Bain Capital. He is, maybe not a business genius, but he is a successful businessman. There's two great ironies of this speech. The first is he inherited his business. He didn't create it. Mitt Romney's dad was a major, I believe, car manufacturing CEO before he became mayor of Detroit or governor of Michigan. Sorry, I'm terribly prepared for today. I shouldn't have even done this show, but show must go on, right? So anyways, Mitt Romney also inherited his business. He didn't create it. So, I mean, it takes one to know one, and let's not go ad hominem on Romney as he's going ad hominem on Trump. But yeah, pretty shitty. Not going to do anything, that attack. Now, what Romney did advocate is basically, given the current delegate selection process, he would vote for Marco Rubio in Florida, for John Kasich in Ohio, and for Ted Cruz, or whichever one of the other two contenders has the best chances of beating Mr. Trump in a given state. Basically, what he's saying is his plan, what he thinks they should do, is try to split the vote so much away from Trump that he doesn't have that many delegates at the convention and they can nominate someone else. God, that just feels like a horrible idea to me. I mean, great from my perspective because fall apart GOP, do it. I would love to watch that happen. But if they pull a stunt like that, if they screw Trump over at the convention and he's maybe like the leader in delegates but doesn't have enough, and then all of the other ones, hash it out in some kind of crazy convention like the fucking season 6 finale of The West Wing, and they pick some other guy, Trump supporters will go nuts. And they will not support that other guy, and Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders will walk their way into the White House. So it could be great, but it's just a terrible thing for you to suggest, Mitt Romney. So the other irony, let me just hit this real quick. Romney also doubled down on his calls for Trump to disclose his tax returns. I don't know if you followed the 2012 elections at all, the one Romney was in, but he too was asked for a long, long time to release his tax returns. The flip here is that Romney didn't want everyone to know how much money he had and how little taxes he paid. Trump probably doesn't want everyone to know how little money he has. So, what a stupid thing Mitt Romney did. This is not going to make a difference. This is not going to hurt anybody. If anything, it will help Trump. But we're talking about it because it's the big thing for today. Trump, of course, hit back really hard with much better attacks than Romney had in his thing. Gonna run real quick through the economic rundown because basically the news is not much happened for today. This video, Bloomberg has these annoying ass videos that autoplay on the top of their stories. This one literally opens with a guy going, here, I'll play you this.
How bored am I?
How bored am I? And then the guy tries to convince him that no, this is the start. This is the start of things turning around. It's gonna get big. You should be excited. It's gonna be a big deal. Everything's gonna be great. But for today, not much happened. Energy producers led the S&P's gains to erase their decline so far for the year. Banks did good as well. The S&P was up 0.5%. The Dow was up 0.3%. Small cap stocks were up 1%. Basically, what people see happening is that, quote, investors are clearing the decks ahead of tomorrow's jobs report. Anything that moves in the direction of the Fed's game plan of 4 rate hikes this year will be a real market mover. A big gain in tomorrow's jobs report would definitely put a near-term hike back on the table. So really, we're all getting ready for tomorrow when February jobs numbers are going to come out. And if they're good, the Fed is going to continue with its plan to raise rates, which is going to obviously trickle down through the rest of the economy and cause all kinds of changes. So everyone is bracing themselves for that. That's basically what happened today. There's 2 other things, and you know what? So I've got actual full stories on those. I'm just going to skip to those real quick. Let's run through, see if there's anything else. Worth pointing out, just fucking a few days ago, I was talking about volatility and how that's the sort of the big thing right now is you get all this volatility and, things go way up one day and then way down the next day and then way up the one day and then way down the next day. But since I said that, we've had basically a few nothing days where not much has happened. And there's this thing called the VIX, which is run by the Chicago Board Options Exchange, measures volatility in the markets. And it has been holding at its lowest level since December 29th last year. So volatility is actually down, things are stabilizing, and that's pretty much a good thing. However, we're going to talk about it at some point. Volumes were pretty low today, not much trading actually took place, so yeah, there have been good numbers, and yeah, people are getting a little encouraged and things are going in a generally upward direction, but not with any kind of conviction whatsoever, just with the sort of, I guess things are okay. But 8 of the 10 industries in the S&P 500 went up, so it's a pretty broad-based. I guess things are okay. Home builders were among the best performers, rising for the 9th time in the last 10 days. Today, about 1.6%, so they're up 19% on the month. That's good news. And yeah, that's the end of that story. So the 2 pieces of good data we got were less growth in the services. This is okay. Hold on. Growth in U.S. service industries slowed for a 4th straight month in February, prompting the first job cuts in 2 years. This is not a very good data point. The ISM's non-manufacturing index eased to 53.4 from 53.5. So again, teeny tiny little move. In these indexes like this, 50 is the dividing line between expansion and contraction. So 53.5 means small gains. If it were 46.5, it would be small losses. Here's the services gauge. So you see 50 is off the bottom of this chart, right? So for a while we've been having strong growth, but the growth is slowing. And so people are starting to adjust and they're cutting a little bit. Services industry in America is the lion's share of the economy. We are a services-based economy. The three tiers, there's like raw materials, which is like what, colonies and small countries do. Then there's manufacturing, which is, things like what historically has just been China and Mexico and is now sort of the other smaller, Southeast Asian nations. And then on the top, there's services, which is, everything from construction to finance to working at a Starbucks. It's the things that allow the other things to get done more efficiently. 14 of the 18 industries expanded last month, led by hotels and restaurants and management companies. So hotels and restaurants, that's like hospitality and entertainment. Management companies, that's, running shit. This is not, companies making software or creating innovative ways to do new shit with the manufactured goods. This is just sort of the types of people who support the 1%. So worth keeping an eye on that as we have this story of, the economy at large is doing great, and yet there are all these people who feel that it's doing horribly, and it's not just because they're being lied to. So yes, we have, expansion. Yes, we do have expansion, but is it in the right place? Is it doing the right thing? That's the question. So yeah, basically the argument is that manufacturing has been falling and has started to pick up, and that people believe that services are following the same trend. So they're optimistic about that. Okay, let's move on to our last story for the day. This is jobless benefits applications has gone up, but is still in line with like what you want to see in a healthy economy, right? Because if no one is applying for jobless benefits, it means no one is leaving their jobs, and it means that everyone is probably terrified of being able to find a new job, and it means that there's not enough sort of mobility within the economy, and people feel stuck, and maybe they're not working in exactly where they should. I guess maybe possibly everyone is working exactly where they should, but that's not how things go. So the number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits rose last week to a level that's consistent with steady improvement in the labor market. Firings have been at subdued levels for a year as employers retain workers to cater to rising demand, a trend that the February payrolls report is projected to underscore. Again, they're talking about tomorrow. We're going to get these payroll numbers and see for real how well the employment market is doing. But people think it's doing pretty well, and they think that's because there is more demand for goods. We've had this supply glut of way too much stuff, but demand is sort of slowly rising to catch up for it, maybe. Here's the jobless claims number, or graph of it. Here, it's right here is 270,000. So it's been higher. It's been, but it's roughly been in this region where you want to see it for a while. All right, I'm gonna call that story over. So let's end with just this happy little story. Let me set up the background for you, and don't. Sorry, they're spoiling the thing in the title of the video, but I guess you should know. So Tiger Woods designed his first golf course and had a tournament to break it in, the inaugural game on the thing. This is the first kid who's going to tee off, and here is what.
Please welcome to the number one tee from Corpus Christi, Texas, a man with a perfect school attendance record until today, Mr. Taylor Crozier.
Allegedly, one of these people who hugs him, that I think right there is, that's Tiger Woods. So you got to hug Tiger Woods. Got to watch this kid hit a hole in one. You got to have Tiger Woods watch him hit a hole in one. And get hugged, and everyone, it was on film. And it's just a great, great moment. So let's end on that for today. Hopefully this weekend brings some good news and some fun and some wonderful things for all of you. I will talk to you on Monday. Have a lovely life. Goodbye.